Okay, welcome back after a good break. We had some 4 to 5 days break, right? And I hope you covered all the videos of SSAS and SQL Server basics. And before continuing the MDX, I have to say one thing. You have done a good job in the test I have conducted a couple of days back. You performed well, but a couple of guys, the presentation was not so good, but the concept, those guys got the concept, and a couple of guys, the presentation also too good, and expecting more from you people. Okay, that's a fantastic job, but even more. So I don't want you to get you to be thrown out of the company saying that you are not performing well. So cracking an interview is not a big deal. Once you get the job, managing the work days that you are going to get is the big deal. So for that, you need to be expertise in the technology or tool, whatever you're learning. So once again, fantastic job, and let's start. And you can expect a surprise test anytime, maybe tomorrow also. I can guarantee. Okay, and for the videos, and I'm not going to cover each and every concept. So you better go through microsoftguide.com, where I'll be uploading a couple of articles, which I might not explain in the session. So it is not possible to cover each and every topic of the tool in 60 training sessions. Yeah, so you better go through microsoftguide.com whenever you are free, or some other sites which will give you where you can find articles on Microsoft VA. Sorry, Microsoft VA. So you have to search for only Microsoft VA stuff until you get familiar, until you get hands-on experience on this technology. Okay, fine. Let's start. We are done with the SSAS. Now, what is next? SSA, SSRS, or MDX, or SQL Server Advanced Concepts, or SSIS. So I can go with any one of these two, either MDX or SSRS. So SSRS does not need MDX. SSRS is like this. It can take either SQL Server or analysis services. So we can continue and we can finish SSRS training without knowing MDX. Okay, with having little knowledge on MDX, I can say. And after completing SSRS, we can come back to MDX. But that is not the best way. Why? Because if you know MDX, it will be easy for you to learn SSRS with SQL Server queries and MDX queries. So what I'm going to do here is, let me draw the map, chart what I'm going to do here. First, we are done with SSAS here. This is AS path and this is RS path. Okay, RS can be developed, reports can be developed using SQL Server or by using analysis service data, that is using MDX. So before knowing MDX, we can directly jump into RS part. No problem. We can, report will have two things. One is getting data, another one is designing the report. So we can learn complete designing part. Designing is the key for SSRS. So designing of the reports using SSRS by pointing to SQL Server database. Why? Because you know SQL Server basics and you know how to write select statements. The major part is designing in SSRS. So you can become familiar. And after that, we can jump back to MDX. Sorry, it's gone. Sorry, we can jump back to MDX and finish MDX. After finishing MDX, let's revisit SSRS, how to design SSRS reports with MDX. So this is one way. I feel this is a long cut. So what I'm doing here is, after finishing SSRS, let's finish MDX. And after finishing MDX, I'm going to give you a break for a couple of days, not to enjoy, but to get complete knowledge on SSAS and MDX, both, and SQL Server basics too. And once it is done, let's jump into SSRS using MDX and also using SQL Server, which will be easy to cover. So this is the flow. After that, we will be going to advanced concepts of SQL Server, and then SSIS, where we're going to put an end to MSBI training sessions after this SSIS. So this is the flow, nothing to worry, none of the tools are interrelated. So we can jump from X to Y and or Y to X and then to Z. So we completed the Y part in XYZ, and then we'll go to Z part, and then we'll come to X part. So nothing to worry. Now let's start with MDX. So before going to the MDX, what is MDX? MDX is nothing but a querying language, database querying language. Okay, if you see, let me take this out. Let me take the pen again. So this one, if you see, this is your two-dimensional database, and using SSAS you created multi-dimensional database. Even this is a database and this is a database, but only the difference is the first one is two-dimensional, whereas the second one is multi-dimensional. The output of SSAS one is multi-dimensional. So to query the data, that means to insert, to update, to delete, or to select the data, we use SQL Server. TSQL, Transact SQL, is the querying language. Okay. In the same way, we need some querying language to query the data from Cube database, and we call it as MDX. MDX stands for multi-dimensional expressions. In expressions, E is not highlighted, so they have taken X from expressions. So MDX stands for multi-dimensional expressions, using which we query the data from our Cube database. So this MDX is nowhere related to our two-dimensional database, that is underlying database. It talks only with Cube database. So I don't need to worry about AdventureWorks DW database from now onwards. I need to worry about only the cube I have developed. So what is the cube I have developed? Let me go to that first. I have to make sure whether the cube is ready to query, to start with MDX part or not. So let me see whether the cube is ready or not. This is business intelligence. This is the cube solution or SSA solution. So I have added so much of junk at the end. So what I'm gonna do here is, let me keep it like this. I have time dimension with one hierarchy and couple of attributes, and employee dimension with full name and manager employee hierarchy and employee key, and product. So product is not so good looking here. The name is dim product. So let me delete the dim from the name. Okay. Now we'll go to the cube. Have couple of facts, that fact measure group, that is dim product and sales, fact internet sales. Let me delete the unwanted measures from the dim product. There are so many unwanted measures. Let me have weight, date of manufacture, let it be, dealer price, dim product count. I don't want. Let's say I want only standard cost. So I have three aliases. For one is due date, order date, and ship date. I don't want time here. Why? Because it is already taken role playing dimensions. Now product, I'll rename it to dim, from dim product to product. Let me add the another dimension we have, that is employee. So here everything is related, but employee there is no relationship and hence it is not related. So let me delete it. Stop having, I don't need it. So let me process the cube. So if this is processed, then the database will be created in the analysis services. So once the database is created, then I can use MDX to query the data from analysis services. Why I have to use MDX when I have a fantastic option called browser in my cube? So I have a browser here. In browser, I can drag and drop whatever I want, and I can see however the data I wish to. So in that case, why I have to write MDX and why I have MDX concepts where I need it. So let's discuss about that first and then jump into the MDX syntax and all. So let the cube get processed. It is creating indexes for this. Yeah, done. So the cube is processed. So when I have a browser option here, why I need to write MDX queries? See, the main point is this browser, what you are seeing here is a database, is a solution. You cannot give or you cannot copy the solution in each and every individual user machine, right? You cannot copy and you cannot process it. So that is one major drawback of using the browser here, browser in the solution. Keeping this one aside, we have one more place where we can find the browser. Let me show you that. I'm going to SQL Server Management Studio. So here I'm connecting to analysis services. You can see the server type I'm taking as analysis services. So I'm connecting to analysis services engine and passing the local host as the server name. That means where I process the cube, where I deployed the cube, I'm going to connect to that. I connected to that, and this is the database I processed a couple of minutes back. Now if you go to the cube here, if you right click, you have an option called browse. So if you click on the browse, you'll get similar browser environment or wizard which you have seen in the solution. So if you see, it is very close, very similar, right? If you minimize this, it's pretty similar to that. So if I have an option, this is not a solution, right? This is my database. I can connect to this database from any machine. That means any user can connect to this database. Then when I have this option, why people are going for MDX? When I have a fantastic option like this, why people are going for MDX? So the main reason, the first and foremost reason is whenever you are querying, whenever you are showing the data in a report, okay, this one every time you have to drag and drop and design whatever you want. So if you design a report needs data. So you cannot get data like this. Here you can drag and drop and see, that's it, and then close it. You cannot read the data and display the same data in a report. So to show the data in a report, you need a query. You need to query the database, or to show the data in any front-end tools like or front-end using front-end languages like .NET, Java, or something else. If I click on some button in Java, I cannot write coding like come here and open and get the data. I cannot do like this. I can by using the help of browse option. So the only option is you have to pass MDX query from any front-end language. That query will be executed in the SSIS database, and then the query result set will be sent to the front-end application where it will display as per the user's requirement. So that is why MDX is important. Even you can see if you connect to the SQL Server database, you can see the data, or you can create the database using wizards. The first thing what we have seen is the same. Creating the database using wizards and inserting the data and viewing the data. If you see, this is the database and these are all the tables. Dim time is one table among that. If you right click and select top 1000 rows, what it is going to do is it is going to get the data, right? But this one will not help in creating reports, in designing reports, or in pushing data to the reports, right? So for pushing the data to the front-end applications, you need to execute a query which will return the result set that is expected or that is looking for. So this browse option is to temporarily check whether the data is coming correctly or not, or if you want to make some analysis like data checks, mainly for data checks, whether the data is coming correctly or not. Then how to write MDX queries and where to write MDX queries. I don't have such option called browse. I'm saying that you should not use the browse option. So first let me disconnect this. Where I have to write MDX queries. To write MDX queries, select the database, not the cube, select the database. Okay. After selecting the database, click on new query. If you click on new query, the same tree structure open on the left hand side and a query pane on the right hand side. So this is the place where you can write your MDX queries, or your MDX queries will be executed. So if you pass a query from front end, I mean any application like SSRS report or Dundas report or whatever it may be, or Excel sheet, even Excel will generate a query. Whatever you select, it will generate an MDX query, and it will be passed to the MDX, SSIS engine, and then it will be displayed. It will send the result set to the front end application, and then the result will be displayed. And for your understanding, here I'm dragging and dropping couple of row items, couple of detail items, and couple of columns, right? So it is not pulling directly. First, what it will do is it will generate an MDX query. It won't give you what MDX it is generating. It generates an MDX query, and this MDX will be hit to analysis services database, that is MSBI database, right? Where is the database name? Yep, here. It will hit in the MSBI database, it will execute in the MSBI database, and the result set will be displayed in the browser. So whether it is browser or Excel or third-party tool or SSRS or any application, you can get data from a cube database using only MDX. But the only difference is this will not show the complexity of the writing MDX. So it will generate MDX internally, and then it will get the data and it will display the data to us. It is not directly pulling. It is pulling using MDX only. So MDX, that is why MDX plays a major role. Why? Because you developed a fantastic cube, let's say you developed a fantastic cube and everything is good, the performance is good and everything is good. And if you cannot query that, it's of no use. The data will be deployed, the data will be processed and stored in the analysis server. But what is the use? You cannot deploy. I mean, if you can't retrieve it and you cannot use it in the applications or reporting tools, then it's of no use. So that is why MDX plays a major role. Most of the guys knows how to design SSAS cubes, but very little people knows, and very little people shows interest in learning MDX and writing MDX queries. So now let's see how to write. And one more important thing is here, nothing like update, delete, drop, something like that. The only statement you can write is select statement or create statement sometimes. But 90% or 95% of the queries are select statements, only select statements. Why? Because this is the data warehouse. This is the processed data warehouse data in multi-dimensional format. So what you are going to do, you have to use this data to analyze whether it is good or not, whether the business is going good or not, whether some entity is performing well or not. So the major purpose of this data warehouse solution, that is this OLAP solution, is to analyze your business, and hence it accepts it. Most of the queries, I can say 95 to 98% of the queries or 99% of the queries are holding select statements. You can create calculated measures using MDX, and you can create subcubes. There are a couple of things, but not frequently used one. Okay, very rarely people uses that. So let's see our first select statement in MDX. Generally, how you will write a select statement in SQL. So it will be like this: select whatever the columns you want. Okay, from table name where condition. Okay, this is a normal T-SQL select statement. Now let's see how the MDX query looks like. MDX query looks very similar, but here it is two-dimensional and hence only columns. But this MDX is multi-dimensional. So you will not have columns, you will have axis. Zero axis, that is x-axis, y-axis, z-axis, and so on. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on axis. So let me start, let me write a simple statement: select items on axis 0, comma, items on axis 1, on axis 2, on axis 3, and so on. This is multi-dimensional. This is not two-dimensional. You can have n number of axes, and from, instead of table name, you will get from cube. So it is cube name where some condition. So this is how the MDX query looks, the basic syntax of MDX query. So instead of columns, you will have axis, and instead of table name, you will have cube name. So what is an axis? Axis is a representation of either columns or rows, one particular way of seeing the data, I can say. So axis 0 means columns. It will display in columns. Axis 1 means rows. Axis 2 means pages. Axis 3 means sections. Axis 4 means indexes, something like that. You'll have so many axes like axis 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. It starts from 0. The points to remember here are it starts with 0. And you cannot use axis 1 without using axis 0. In the same way, you cannot use axis 2 without using axis 1 and 0. So always the next time any axis can be used without any gaps before to the particular axis. So this is about axis and simple MDX query. When we write couple of MDX queries, you will become familiar with all these axes and all. Now, couple of things to remember. Axis 0 is equal to simply 0 is equal to columns. You can use any one thing. Either you can go for axis 0, or if you think that you can't write the full name of like axis of 0, you can simply go for 0, or you can use columns. In the same way, axis 1 also can be represented as 1. This is called rows. And don't worry about axis 2, 3, 4, and 5 and so on. Why? Because even though the MDX is multi-dimensional one, SSIS is multi-dimensional one, but the desktop you are having is two-dimensional. The computer that you are using is two-dimensional. It can show data only in two-dimensional, and hence this MDX is limited to only two dimensions until the three-dimensional or multi-dimensional system comes into picture. So as the systems does not support multi-dimensional, it supports only two-dimensional dimensional, and hence our MDX queries will have syntax similar to this. So what I'm doing, I'm having 0th axis and first axis. That's it. So the 0th axis will talk about columns and first axis talks about rows. So this is equal to this is equal to this. You can use anything, any of these three, either axis of 0 or columns, axis of 1 or rows, or you have one more option. You can go for axis of 0 there and only 1 here. You can represent as per your wish, as per your comfort. Okay. However you write the query, it works fine. So this is about the basic MDX query and the things to remember. Like, you cannot write an MDX query without having 0th axis and by using first axis like this. For using axis 1, you have to use axis 0. You have to define or you have to declare axis 0. You cannot declare the next axis without declaring the current one. Like 0, you cannot go for 1 without defining 0. It should be in order. That's what I am trying to say. So this is wrong. Why? Because the access 0 is not declared here. So this is about MDX, and let's start with um, our first MDX query. The basic MDX query that will work. Generally people ask in interviews, what is the simple MDX query that can return data? When they ask me the same question, I have written this. Select star from cube name. This is what I have written. But what they were trying to get from me is, they were trying to get the answer like using columns. But I have not given that answer. I know, I mean, access 0 is not mandatory and you can write simple select from cube name. The only problem with this statement, he asked me a couple of times, are you sure this one will work? This one works. I said this will work. I was pretty confident. Why? Because I executed this query a couple of times before when I was learning MDX. But the only problem is it will give you some value, the default value, that's it. It won't give you any column or any row or any header like that. Just some default measure value. There will be a default measure value. If you write select from cube, it will give you the default measure value. But the minimum syntax for select statement is at least having columns. So select, let's say I want to show sales or sales amount on columns. I have to drag like this. On, I prefer to write columns, and I'm not adding rows here, so directly from cube name. So what this one will do is, this one will give you the sales amount value but with the column header. So that is the difference between this query and this query. And if you see here, the value, it is 14092 something blah blah blah, and if you execute this, it is returning the same value but without header. The problem, the reason is, the sales amount is the default measure. That's why it is showing the value of the default measure, that is this one. If I give tax amount here instead of sales amount, the value will differ. It gives you tax amount. Okay. Then it will show tax amount. So the value of this query will be varied with this one. So the default measure what we have taken is sales amount, and hence it is showing sales amount for this query too. And don't try to use this query. This is just a dummy one. When the interviewer asked me what is the shortest possible query you can write, I told him this one. But what is the use of using that query, writing that query, or using that query in SSRS or anywhere else? You cannot make use of it, right? So this is just a junk query. So this is how you can select columns in an MDX query. You are specifying, I want to show sales amount on columns. So if you execute this, it will show you sales amount. Now how to add rows? Let me copy the same query. Select measures.sales amount on columns, comma. If I have rows, then I have to add comma to separate rows and columns. And I'm taking year on rows from cube name. So if I execute this, I'll get the sales amount on columns and the rows item. Observe this. I have given sales amount on columns, and hence it is coming as sales amount is coming in column, and years in rows, it is coming in rows, and the value, the intersection value, the sales amount for this year is this, the sales amount for this year is this. So this is how the MDX query works. This is the similar one what you have seen here, right? You drag and drop year and sales amount. It is showing you some table format. In the same way, if you write that to get the same output, the MDX query is, you have to write like this. Select measures on columns and year on rows from cube name. What if I interchange? Interchange in the sense, if I make it as rows and if I make this one as columns, nothing will happen. It will be interchanged. That's it. So if you see, the years are on columns as per the definition of the query, and sales amount is on rows. This sales amount for this year is this, and sales amount for this year is this, sales amount for this year is this. So this is called dicing part. Dicing in the sense rows will be changed to columns, columns will be changed to rows, and just to make analyze the business. If you want while analyzing the business, you need to dice and you need to slice. So dicing means interchanging the rows and columns, or changing a row item and moving the row item to column item and column item to row item is called dicing part. And you will know more about dicing and slicing in future sessions. So this is a simple query where I have a row item and I have a column item. Now, before going to the next or complex queries, we need to know a couple of things. The first one is, if you see measure, the measure it is showing as measures dot sales amount. This is fine. But if you see the dimension, it is showing due date dot calendar year. And also again I am getting calendar year. So due date dot calendar year dot calendar year. So I am getting 3. I don't know why. So let me explain this part, which is very, 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 very important. If you don't understand this, then you cannot write an MDX query. So concentrate, and this is an important part of MDX. So MDX, any item, either measure or attribute. This is an attribute, right? This is an attribute. This is an attribute. Calendar quarter, calendar semester, calendar year, and this is a hierarchy. And we call this one as levels. Remember this. This is hierarchy. Each one under that is levels. And this is called attribute. Okay. Now let me interpret. Let me drag 3 items. One is one measure item. I've dragged measure from sales amount from measures. And now I'm dragging calendar quarter. One attribute I'm dragging here. And then I'm dragging one hierarchy level. So this is measure. This is attribute. This is hierarchy level. So all these 3 are items, nothing but these 3 will return the same data, data whatever it is processed. But what is the difference between these 3? If you see the measure, it is having only 2. So remember, except the last item, the flow will be like this. This is called hierarchy. Okay, this is the measure, and everything before this measure item is called hierarchy. So this is measure, before this is this part, and this is attribute, before this is this part, right? Due date dot calendar quarter, and this is at hierarchy level, and here the this is calendar year is the hierarchy level, whereas due date dot calendar height is the hierarchy. So for every item we will have 3 things. One is dimension, next one is hierarchy, and third one is the item. Okay, I am taking generalized name. So let's take a measure. If I take a measure, the dimension item is nothing. Nothing will be there for measure. And hierarchy item is measures. And item is sales amount. Now I'm going to attribute. The dimension is due date, and hierarchy is calendar quarter, and item is also calendar quarter. Now I am going to the third one, hierarchy level. The dimension is due date, and hierarchy is calendar hire, and item is calendar year. So what, see, the every item will have three things. One is dimension, another one, second one is hierarchy, and the third one is item. This item can be either measure item or calendar dimension attribute item or hierarchy level item. So the syntax is like this: dimension dot hierarchy dot item. Okay, if you see, this is hierarchy, this comes to hierarchy, and this is the measure item. Here the first one is, what we call it as, this one dimension, next one is hierarchy, and next one is attribute. Here the first one is dimension, the second one is hierarchy, third one is hierarchy level. So I know this is very confusing, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to eliminate this part. Let's not concentrate on hierarchies. Let's concentrate on only attributes. What is an attribute? Attribute is nothing but a dimension table column. Okay, an attribute, any attribute will have three things. One is dimension, another one is hierarchy, and the third one is attribute. So dimension is nothing but to which dimension this particular attribute belongs to, and hierarchy is nothing but what is the hierarchy of this, and attribute is the column name. For dimensions, the attribute name and the hierarchy name will be same always. For attributes, I'm extremely sorry. For an attribute, the hierarchy name and the attribute name will be same. So whatever you drag, for example, I'm taking calendar semester. If I drag, I'm getting 3. And if you see, the hierarchy and the attribute is same. And now I'm taking time key. So here if you see, the hierarchy part and the attribute name part is same. So this is the structure of attributes. Attributes will have three things. One is dimension, and another one is hierarchy, and another one is attribute name. So in attributes, the hierarchy name and the attribute name will always remain the same. So if you understand this, then we can go with the queries, and later part of the sessions we can cover hierarchies. Let's not concentrate on hierarchies at this point of time. First you have to get some basic knowledge on MDX queries. So you remember only one thing. Any attribute, whatever you are going to drag, it will be of this structure: dimension dot hierarchy dot attribute. So this is how it should be. This is only for attributes, and for any measure you take, it will be, the first one will be measures dot that measure name. That's it. So the example for measures is measures dot sales amount, and attribute example is, for dimension it is due date dot time key dot time key. As I said, the hierarchy and the attribute will remain the same for any attributes. Okay, now let's see how to use an attribute in a query. Select, I'm taking attribute, right? I'm taking calendar year. Calendar year on columns from cube name. My cube name is AdventureWorks. So what this one is gonna give? As we are asked for, it will give the calendar year wise sale. So it is giving the default measure values. You have not specified any measure here. So it is giving default measure values. And if you want to have one more attribute on rows, if you want to add one more attribute on rows, then you can go like this. Let's say I want to go for calendar semester on rows from cube name. So to execute this, the columns it has taken year and rows it has taken semesters. Based on that, the sales amount is split. If you don't want sales amount, the default measure, if you want some tax amount, then you can simply use where condition. You don't need to write complex query or add something else. If you add where condition, it will be changed. It will get the data where measure is sales amount. So it can be used like this. Okay, the where condition also. So this is a simple MDX query, and you don't get confused. The only thing you have to remember is you will have two axes. One is 0 and another one is 1. 0 axis is columns and axis 1 is rows. And that you cannot write a query without having column axis and by having row axis. It should be always sequential. It should be 0 and then 1 and then so on. And how to use a measure? It will be measures dot measure name. And how to use an attribute? It will be dimension dot for which it belongs to dot. Hierarchy is nothing but the attribute name dot again attribute name. For example, due date dot time key dot time key. So this is the representation of attributes. So let's give a break here. I mean, I don't want you to get confused. You need to know these basic concepts very well. So go through this video once again and be prepared for next session where we are going to discuss about a couple of functions. And remember one thing, in MDX, first of all, MDX is a limited language. It is not like a SQL Server where you can write your own stored procedures or user-defined functions. There is nothing such kind of things. Whatever MDX, whatever the functions they provided, it is full of functions, okay, system functions, where you can just make use of that functions. You cannot write your own function here. It's not like in SQL Server. In SQL Server, you can write your own functions and stored procedures, and you can create so many different objects to achieve the requirement. But here it is very, very limited, and there will be some 100 to 200 functions. If you know all those functions, then you are expert in the MDX language. Before knowing that, you need to know what is the structure of measure. I mean, if you want to make use of a measure, how to call that. That is measures dot measure name, and the structure of attribute. It is dimension dot hierarchy dot attribute. This is pretty important. If you don't understand this, you will come across so many errors while writing MDX queries. So repeat this video once again, and we will catch in tomorrow's session with some functions. Thank you very much.